What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. In this video, what I want to do is talk about none other than Saul Canelo Alvarez. And basically, he's getting a lot of press right now. He's in the limelight. He has a lot of different options he can explore as far as his next fight. Some have linked him to Mayweather. He's also been talked to even fight people like Andre Berto, and that's more recent. Andre Berto might go up in weight to fight K9 at 154, depending on how he looks out there, how he feels in terms of his power, being in a new weight class. Those are going to be things that determine the outcome. So who knows? I posted a video on that, so you can click on that video on my channel, Andre Berto, to get more information on that. So there's a lot of people with all eyes on Canelo. They've also talked about Miguel Cotto, Sergio Martinez. It's really up in the air. The winner of Matrosian and Lara, that's his mandatory. So will he decide to fight them? Who knows? So what I want to do is just talk about Canelo and let you know my input as far as him as a fighter. See what you guys feel. Make sure you subscribe and add your comments, and we'll get into it right now. So as far as Canelo, this is my honest, I can't give you guys fluff. I got to give you my honest opinion. This is my honest opinion about Canelo. He's a big, strong kid. He shows technique. He shows patience. And my biggest complaint with that, there is a big and, I don't know how good he is. Even though he showed me those things that I just mentioned, I still don't know how good he is. And that's not normal. And the reason that I don't know how good he is because the level of opposition in which he is facing. So, and it's not even against Canelo. It's more against his handlers, his team, whoever. And I understand all the circumstances surrounding Canelo. He didn't have a large amateur background, or he didn't have an amateur background. But at age 15 in Mexico, he turned pro. There's a thing called learning on the job. And that's what some fighters have to do. Every fighter doesn't have the same career path. Adrian Broder had an amateur background, but other people didn't. So there's no one set guideline or blueprint on having a successful career. And that's just all like walks of life in boxing. Roy Jones Jr., he didn't have an orthodox style, but he was very dominant in the 90s. So orthodox, unorthodox, there's no one set way for success. And that's the same thing with an amateur background, no amateur background. Sergio Martinez, perfect example. He's coming off a huge win, and he started boxing when he was like 20 or 21. That's old for the sport of boxing. Nobody really has a successful, lucrative career. Not many people, I guess you could say, have a successful, lucrative career in the sport for this long, starting when they're age 21. Then you got other new guys like Seth Mitchell. He's a heavyweight fighter, and he has coming from a football background and converted and got into boxing, and he's been looking pretty decent. I mean, obviously he's not ready for a Klitschko or something at this moment, but he's an improving fighter. You see him getting in different situations where he has to make adjustments, and there's a lot of good things that he's doing right. He still needs more work, but I mean, that's to be expected if you're coming from no boxing background. You haven't been boxing since you were a kid. So, like I said, there's a thing called learning on the job. And I feel Canelo with 40 plus fights, you're at that mark right about now, to the point where, okay, there has to be an equivalent, no amateur background, but I'm going to have a certain amount of fights, and then I'm going to start getting into some real deal opponents. So that's my biggest thing with Canelo. I don't really know how good he is based on his opposition. I mean, because if I just watch his fights, then I'm like, okay, this dude's a monster. He's dominating if I don't really know about boxing. But when you start to explore the nuances and the little small print, I guess you could say, that's when you start to uncover some things. So that's what I'm here to talk about. And this is not a Canelo bashing session. He's a good fighter. He's young, he seems hungry, and there's nothing to hate about. But like I said, I got to give you my honest, no filter opinion. My biggest thing with him is, like I said, his level of opposition, and here's why. You fought Josecito Lopez. Did you look dominant? Hell yeah. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I thought it would actually be more competitive than it was, but it wasn't. Um, but the thing is, that's a guy who normally weighs 140 pounds. So realistically, I can't give you full credit for victory against someone who normally fights out of 140 pounds. He did fight at 147 one time, had a shocking upset, and basically Golden Boy decided to use that momentum because he had generated a buzz through the Victor Ortiz fight, and then they just tried to ride that momentum and get a cash payday. But what's happening adversely is it's making Canelo look less than he might even be. We don't know. And I know there's other people out there that have the same feelings as me. We got to see this dude fight somebody. I understand boxing is a business, but at the same time, um, what is like this is I hear the same excuse. Canelo's not fighting Trout. He's not fighting Lara. Blah blah blah. Why? Because they're nobodies. Like these are like title holders and undefeated fighters and all kinds of stuff. So how like they're nobodies and nobody knows them, no one would buy it. That's to me that's gibberish because if you really think about it, if you are a true fan of the sport, you're going to want to watch it. If you are a true fan of a certain fighter, you're going to want to watch it. So, if you're a Canelo fan, why would you not support it just because you haven't heard of his opponent? Did people not watch Manny Pacquiao's fight with Timothy Bradley the first time because they didn't really know Timothy Bradley? I'm sure a lot of Filipino fans and just boxing fans of Pacquiao tuned in, even if they didn't know, if they're casual fans, they didn't know who Timothy Bradley is. So, as far as saying that, that's false. And another thing, Canelo has huge star power, and look at Miguel Cotto, who's fighting Austin Trout. They expect to sell out, and it's almost sold out at this point. It might be sold out. This is just based on the last time I checked. So, if Canelo were to fight Trout, it wouldn't be the same outcome. I mean, we know Miguel Cotto obviously has a huge fan base, but I think you could generate good numbers just because Canelo is a big star too. He's one of the biggest and brightest young stars in boxing. He's huge over in Mexico, so I mean, I don't really buy that excuse as oh he's not fighting Lara and Vanez and all these people based solely on their marketability. So that's that. And then, like I said, against Josecito, I understand it's a business and you want to ride that momentum. And I understand there were previous opponents that didn't work out, but you have to look at those opponents. Paul Williams, he hasn't looked incredible since the Sergio Martinez fight. Did I want to see that fight? Yes. Do I think Paul Williams had a good shot of beating him? Yeah, it could have been a good competitive fight. But they're picking fighters for him at the point in their career that you could definitely question. And if you disagree with what I'm saying in the comments, let me know who Canelo has fought that has had a name in the sport, who has meant something to the sport, and they look good in their last 3 performances. And I can't think of anybody. Kermit Cintron. Kermit Cintron lost 2 out of 3 of his fights before fighting Canelo. Carlos Baldemir. He was 40 years old, and Carlos Baldemir, I believe, lost 1 out of 2 of his previous fights. Plus, he only fought 1 time a year. So a 40-year-old, 1 fight a year, and then you fight a young, strong kid. I mean, he was way past his prime. Shane Mosley, 2 back-to-back losses, 1 to Floyd and 1 to Pacquiao. And then he fought Canelo. So these wins aren't as impressive as if you were beating somebody. Like if you beat Sergio Martinez after his win against Chavez Jr., that's a statement. Because obviously we've seen what Sergio can do against a much bigger. They said Chavez was weighing 192 pounds. Just a side note that on fight night, that's ridiculous for a middleweight. But that means something. You could beat Sergio Martinez, and he just came off a huge win. His confidence should be at an all-time high. He beat someone 11 years younger. That actually means something. The Miguel Cotto and Austin Trout, depending on how that looks. If you beat him, that's a statement. But as far as who you fought previously, those aren't huge statements. Matthew Hatton, he's known because of his brother. So that's, I mean, and he was a welterweight, so he had to come up in weight. And that's the thing. It's like all these people are either just complete tomato cans. Like if I read some of the names, you wouldn't even know who they were, or they have a name, or they had to come up in weight. You know what I mean? It's just basically everyone that I could think of in recent memory has had a severe handicap or disadvantage before the fight even starts. And most recently, Josecito. And I don't know if a lot of you guys know this. Some people are casual fans. Some people are claim to be hardcore fans. Some people are actually hardcore boxing fans. But in the Josecito fight with Canelo, do you realize Canelo was a 14-1 favorite? Let me say that again. Canelo was a 14-1 favorite. So basically what you're saying with that is if there are 15 people in a room, one person thinks Josecito has what it takes to win and to beat that. Those are horrible odds. And it has nothing to do with the fighter's likability or marketability, because there are other fighters who the public in general dislikes, like Floyd Mayweather. And then people love Miguel Cotto. Miguel Cotto is kind of like known to be like a people's champ, and a lot of people just like Cotto. I mean, I like Cotto. I like Mayweather. I like them. I like them both. They're both skilled fighters. But what I'm saying is Mayweather, because of his antics and the jail stint and stuff, a lot of people dislike him. Whereas Cotto's pretty humble. He doesn't really trash talk. He just goes there and does what he does, and that's it. So if you look at the betting odds in a fight like that, even though Mayweather is dislikable based on his antics and the way he carries himself at certain times, the betting odds were not 14-1. Another example, Sergio Martinez, Chavez Jr. Chavez Jr. has a huge fan base. His father is a boxing legend. Sergio Martinez is getting old. He didn't look good or tremendous in his last two fights, even though he had 11th round knockouts. He didn't look like Superman, like unstoppable. But guess what? The betting odds weren't 14-1. So that's my point. I need to see Canelo fight people where the odds aren't stacked against them before they even enter the ring, like coming up in weight or their age, or they've looked suspect prior to fighting. I mean, it's beyond that. I got to see more, and then I'll really be able to gauge it. And like I said, I'm a fan of the sport, so I'm not wishing Canelo bad things. I want the hype to be real. I mean, that's good for boxing. He's a young, strong fighter, and he's only 22. So I'm not passing judgment and saying he can't beat whoever. I mean, because there's plenty of people I think he can beat, like Canine Bundridge. I think he would totally outbox him. But I can't be sure, and I would never even bet on it based on the fact of I've never really even seen him with a 154-pounder who's coming off a win. So that has a name, you know what I'm saying? So even though I think he would beat Canine, and I'm pretty sure he would, based on their styles, and Canine's really awkward and not really technical, I still wouldn't bet on it based on the fact that I haven't seen him put in that position. And that's just in life in general. Like, a lot of people say what they would have, like, let's say there's a bank robbery and I'm telling somebody about how I got robbed, and they were like, man, you should have did this. I would have went up to the gunman and I would have fought back. Yeah, right. You get in those situations and you say what you will do, and then you're in the position where you're looking down the barrel of a gun or whatever the situation is, and not everyone does what they say. So, like, as far as Canelo, that's kind of what his career is so far. To me, I think he would beat K9, but I don't know, because I've never seen him in that position. When's the last time you seen Canelo where he had to make several adjustments? Possibly in the Gomez fight, possibly. So, I mean, that's just my personal opinion on Canelo. He's young, strong, hungry, and that's all good, but I just have to see better competition to really gauge where he's at. Other thing people don't realize, like with the Josecito, and I'm saying this is his most recent fight, but in the Josecito fight, this is a guy who typically weighs 140 pounds. He fought at 147 once, and he's going up to 154 to face you. And in the fight game, weight is very essential. Weight can be essential to your training camp. different people have different training camps. Like if you were to look at Chavez Jr. in his training camp, a good portion of his training camp is dedicated to weight management because Chavez Jr. usually weighs a lot more and has to shed 16 to 18 pounds to make the weigh-in. Brandon Rios, another example. Brandon Rios, he had 2 consecutive fights where he looked ghastly. His face was all sucked in, and that's because he's training to make weight. And the same rules apply if you're gaining weight or if you're trying to lose weight. Weight is weight. So if a fighter like Josecito is normally fighting out of the 140 category, for him to go up in essence 154, that takes, your body is a complex machine, so that takes an honest effort and nutrition to put that weight on. I don't know if any of you guys go to the gym or weight train, but if you're a skinny person and you've always weighed 170 pounds and you're like, oh, I want to bulk up for the summer, you're going to have to honestly do the right things in order to put mass on. You have to consume the right amount of calories every day. You're going to have to eat the right amount of protein, etc. I mean, I don't really have to get into a nutritional class right now, but that's what it is. And in the people like Josecito against Canelo, basically a portion of your training camp has to be, instead of being able to work on just technique and how you're going to beat this guy, a portion of it has to be dedicated solely to making weight or to getting to appropriate weight. And that's my point. So let me know what you guys think. This is my opinion. I just like 14-1 favorite. I mean, that's, like I said, that's ridiculous. And if you look at boxing, there are a lot of great fights coming up. Nonito's fight, I'm looking forward to that tomorrow. Brandon Rios, Mike Alvarado. Look at the betting odds on fights like that. It's like 50-50. You don't know who's going to win, Brandon Rios or Mike Alvarado. Antonio DeMarco and Adrian Broner, who will win? In those fights, it really is dependent on who brings the better game plan, who can assert their will, and how they perform that particular night. You look at Lara and Vanez, like who's going to win? Matrosian, who's going to win? Those are close fights, and they're hard to tell. But you look at Josecito and Canelo, I mean, be real. You look at Shane Mosley after he lost twice in a row, he was like far removed from the Margarito win. That had happened years before. Like, would you, even if you want Mosley to win, would you bet your last dollar that he was going to beat Canelo? Probably not at that point in his career. So that's my point. Like I said, it's not to bash Canelo. This is for anybody. The same rules apply. Same rule applied to Adrian Broner. I was like, man, I got to start seeing this dude face tougher opponents because Escobedo and Eloy Perez and stuff, that's not cutting it, and it's not going to cut it for the long haul. If they're claiming that he's the poster boy for HBO or he's the problem, I want to see if anyone can solve that problem. So it's not just with Canelo. Like I said, this video is about Canelo just because he's in the limelight. He has a lot of different options, but same rules apply for everybody. Gary Russell Jr., his opposition needs to increase. And those are my opinions. I keep it fair. I keep it equal. Subscribe and comment. Let me know what you guys think. Is Canelo the real deal? Is he overhyped? Let me know something. Until next video, it's Ego signing off.